down this end with age.
Oh, excuse me.
Age, beauty, and brains. Here we are.
Charles Clark. I was at Emory from 63 through 65, the years when we were sort of really getting going. My first year, as I recall, we prayed that we would get to a tournament that we could do something reasonably well in. And of course, by my second year, the program was so well established that we didn't worry about that. We just worried about getting to tournaments where we could really compete against strong opposition. And it was a totally wonderful experience. My colleague was Larry Woods, my second year. And the significance of that is that I had all the ideas and Larry had all of the evidence. Larry could produce evidence on anything. He could fabricate evidence straight from the Communist Party.
Now that wasn't fabricated, that was an accurate quotation from the chairman of the American Communist Party, Hyman Loomer. And boy, we used to do a couple practice rounds every week, of course, with Glenn Pelham. And I was just so excited. I found this fabulous article by Loomer on full employment. And we were debating Cully and his colleague. I'm Larry Woods. I was at Emory from 1962 to 66. And I laid that Hyman Loomer quotation out there. And Pelham stopped the clock and looked at me and said, "Who did you quote?" "Professor Loomer." "And who is he?" "He's a professor at some college I've never heard of in Ohio." "And didn't he run for president a few years ago?" "I don't know." "Isn't he chairman of the American Communist?" "You will not quote Professor Loomer at any debate." Otherwise, yeah,
Well, now
I had a
that's,
lot of evidence.
yeah, that's funny because when I was debating in Glenn's program at Cairo High School, I came up against a girl from Ocilla, Georgia, and she raised the question of whether I was a communist because of the nature of my plan. And so I got up and I did the debate trick and said, you can't just label something as communist, you've got to prove what's wrong with it. So she comes back to the podium and she says, I don't know about that boy from Cairo, but as for me, I stand on the doorstep steps of democracy and say, Hail Columbia. I think we won, but we shouldn't have after she got rid of me that way. So, but you learn a lot of things in debate. And my name is Cully Clark. It comes off of Ernest Culpeper Clark, and I'm his brother.
I'm one too. I claim to be a Clark brother.
He's an adopted brother.
That's right.
But what we learned through debate was vocabulary. And I don't mean the meaning of words. I mean how to express an idea, how to express a thought. And I thought our speaker today, the Georgia Speaker of the Year, Doug Shipman, was just spot on when he says, if you get a good speech, keep giving it. Because every time you give it, you develop something about it. The idea enlarges, it strengthens itself, and you develop that way of thinking that becomes persuasive.
Cully, I now understand your entire college debate career. You gave the same speech every year.
Got it?
The three of us.
See, I didn't know I was a genius.
The three of us, and the fourth guy was Bill Aber, Cully's partner, and Glenn Pelham traveled the nation, his Studebaker Lark, and Charles Start here was accurate. We were the new kids on the block. Nobody had ever heard of the Emory debate program, outside of Georgia and this limited area. And so for the first time, I guess, your junior year, and Cully's, y'all in the same class, Cully's junior year, for the first time we went to national tournaments in Dartmouth, Northwestern, those Georgetown. And again, we were brand new, nobody had ever heard of us. We spoke with funny accents. And we did all right. We didn't do super, but we did all right. We were breaking in and we knew we were having to overcome obstacles. And we were proud to sort of feel like we were really building, creating a program. And being young and naive, I think, well, it'll just last forever just because we've been here. And as I was telling you before we went on camera here, I think the thing I'm proudest of about the Emory Barkley Forum is that here we are in 2015, 50 years, 52 years after what we're talking about. Y'all are better than ever, are clearly the number one program in the nation of the last, 20 years at least. And there's been such continuity of brilliant leadership, really smart dealing with the administration of the university. And what I'll always be proud of is not the national tournaments you guys and we have won in the past. What I'll always be proud of is the Urban Debate League. I mean, that changes people's lives so far. Just like I know that all of us changed lives from learning to debate, participating in it. But, you know, for all of them, it was really the four of us. Yeah, there were younger people on the team, and after us, they traveled those tournaments. We were a small program. The Urban Debate League, even though the speaker did point out we need a lot more opportunities, you know, that's nationwide, creating opportunities for kids that they would never have had otherwise. Y'all are changing the face of this nation, and we tried to do that. We just didn't have the structure. We had I think the other thing we learned besides vocabulary was an attitude. I can remember Pelham saying, yeah, I judged this round. This Dartmouth kid accused the other one of being a communist. So when the round was over, I said, I appreciate the discussion. I am a member of the Communist Party. And waited for the kid to figure out what to say. You know, it's a way of thinking that all of us involved in debate really do understand and relate to.
Let me quickly say, and then I'll hand back off to my brother over here, that this team in the spring of 1965 won the district tournament in District 6, I believe it was at the time.
Yeah, at the time.
And became the first team in the history of the Barkley Forum to advance to the elimination rounds of the National Debate Tournament. So 50 years ago, we first broke out and made it to the elimination rounds of the national tournament. And that owed to the fact this was the best team anywhere in this region, period, hands down.
But there's
Good
some things that you
compliment, but
need to
do the
remember
efforts.
about this team. For example, one member of this team was described by one of the judges that heard him as he sounds like a Nazarene preacher. And that same person in the preliminary rounds for the district that was going to get us to the nationals was in the middle of his first affirmative rebuttal, tearing them apart, and all of a sudden went completely silent for a minute. Had no idea what to say, had lost completely his train of thought. Fortunately, debate is a two-person endeavor. And the other person in the team, in the second affirmative rebuttal, made up for that huge faux pas. So remember that.
But you
When
look
make
good
mistakes-
doing it.
I know. When you make mistakes, as long as you've got a teammate, you can make it back. And remember that when you are a teammate who has to bail someone out, or you're a teammate who causes the trouble, somebody's going to be there to help you if you remember you're a team, not two debaters.
That was a good learning experience.
And I think that's great. I think what all three of you have demonstrated is the passion and love that's associated with debate. And I think all three of you have mentioned Mr. Pelham. And I'd like to kind of give each of you an opportunity to kind of give us a slice of who he was, because it sounds like he was kind of such a touchstone, such a connector to so much of what has become Emory Debate in terms of planting seeds and the vision he had for this tournament, and key coaches, and so many. His legacy and his fingerprints are everywhere, still to this day. So, since you all had such an intimate relationship with him in terms of just getting to see him as a coach and debate for him, we got all these young debaters that they see his picture on the wall, and that's and for so many, that's who he is. So, could you talk a little bit about the memories, or how would you describe him as a person, coach?
Well, see, Charles and I knew him because we grew up in Cairo, where he was from and where he was a high school teacher and a choir director. In fact, I sang in his youth choir at church, and then I sang in choir at church under his direction. He was a monumental figure in the sense of being able to inspire. And everyone that fell under his tutelage wanted to be like him. And it was in imitating him that we began to develop what I call the vocabulary of speaking, of expression, of argument, of being able to engage. Then by the time I actually started debating in high school, he had moved on to Emory, although I did get the influence of his coaching before that. And so I just went from frying pan, fire. The fire was Emory. And I will say one thing about Glenn that really prefigures the Urban Debate League is he believed that it was an educational endeavor. He thought that in and of itself it had an integrity that should not be compromised by the politics of debate, which sometimes put us in an awkward spot. Like Glenn would never reveal a decision. Glenn would never ask another coach for a decision. So he refused that kind of engagements, which just about every other coach was doing out there. And he did it because he thought it wasn't fair to the debaters who couldn't learn their decisions by the inside information. And that kind of sense of fairness and integrity drove him to move in that kind of direction. And he thought that the more we could expand it, the art of debate, the better we would be. And what y'all have achieved with the Urban Debate League through Melissa is living the dream that Glenn had.
I'd mention two things I think about Glenn. I think for all of us, he was the biggest intellect we ever knew. I'm sure that there are other people who are as gifted as Glenn was, but for us, he was Einstein. And in many ways, a Renaissance man in the scope of his knowledge. The other thing that I remember most strongly about him was his way of dealing with the emotions and the personality of debate. In our era, we always knew that there were certain judges we were going to lose. It did not matter that Larry and I may think ourselves the best team in the South. If a certain judge walked in that room, we knew we were going to lose. It's just that simple. He had an answer for us about how to deal with that. It was simply, make him hurt. We should perform at such a level and with such integrity that the person would know that he had done wrong in voting against us. And that's the kind of thing you have to live with in life. There are all kinds of people who are going to do that to you, one way or another. But just make them hurt.
Well, I certainly agree with the observations of both Cully and Charles about Glenn Pelham. He was a role model, a mentor, somebody I looked up to, more than anybody. My father died at an early age, so in a lot of ways, even though he was 10 years older than us, maybe, I looked at him as a father figure over the years and had a long, long personal relationship with him after college over the years. I've got a lot of vivid memories of Glenn. He had the kind of personality, the magnetism of presence that if this room were full of people, he'd sit down over in the corner and everybody in the room would move to the corner because they wanted to talk to him, they wanted to engage him. He was a great teacher of debate. The practice rounds he ran with us, we really did get better. It wasn't fun and games. We improved and got better because he made us work hard at it. Then he'd invite us over to his house, he and Susan Tillman Pelham, and we'd play hearts. Loved to play hearts.
Yes.
On tournaments in the car, at his house, grilled cheese sandwich, hearts. Hundreds of hearts games. I don't think he ever cheated, did he?
Well, I would go.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I remember, Glenn wanted our program to do well. Just like all debaters and everybody in an endeavor, he wanted our program to merit recognition for the educational purposes more than the glory, but glory's good too. And the first year we qualified for the NDT tournament, you could only send one team to the regional tournament to qualify. And Charles and I, my junior year, Charles' senior year, we qualified. We went to NDT in April of 1965. And again, we're now with judges and debate organizations that we had barely encountered much of before that year. And I think Glenn in his heart and soul, he would have never revealed it to us. He thought, we're lucky to be here, we're gonna get clobbered, but we're still proud to be here. And Charles and I, as all debaters would be on that level, were tense every round. Charles and I were great friends, but we'd be bickering coming out of the round, not about what we did, but about, Charles was always the pessimist. Well, we lost that round. And I was always the optimist. What do you mean we crushed them? We couldn't agree. Typical debaters. And so they have a banquet back in those days at the end of the preliminary rounds. And of course, they then start reading out the qualifying teams for out rounds. And about halfway through the list, it's Emory University, Clark, and Woods. Pelham had a mouthful of iced tea. It went all over the table. He was 10 times more excited than we were. Charles and I were trying to be Mr. Cool. Sure, of course, happens to us all the time. I guess I should also admit I had a more tortured relationship with Glenn. When these guys were juniors, I was a sophomore. It was Glenn's first year back as coach. The year before he took off to serve in the state senate. The year before was his first year as the Emory debate coach. So my sophomore year is the first time I meet him. These guys have known him all their lives, basically. And he had 4 top debaters. These 2 guys, Bill Avra, Ben Johnson, and I wasn't one of them. So I was in his office every week saying, why not me? I'm working harder than anybody. I'm better than, typical aggressive, arrogant, naive kid.
Even if it is true.
But it was true. He was as good as he thought
I
he
was giving him a hard time every week, and I look back now and I realized he decided he was going to solve his problem. He started assigning me partners who, nice people, and I liked them. They might have done well in the JV tournament. I'm not going to name any names. Good people. And we'd sort of do okay. It can be at middle-ranked tournaments kind of thing. And finally, over toward Christmas break, I said, look, I've done all this, I'm going to do it all over Christmas, why can't I move up? And he says, well, I tell you what, I'll send you to the Harvard tournament, which we'd never gone to. I don't think we've ever been to since, until maybe the modern era. And let's see how you do. And he assigned me a partner whose name, again, I won't reveal, who we got lucky. We made the out rounds. He's waiting for me to call and say, well, we went 0-8, and that solves his problem. I can't come in and complain all the time. We got lucky. We made the out rounds, and what I call him and tell him is, look, you can't keep giving me these partners. Right in the middle of the quarterfinal round, he dumps 50 of his bottles of pills. He was a hypochondriac. And instead of, gets up in the middle of the round, starts picking up his pills. I was going to kill him. You were great to be silent for a minute. Well, we sort of lost that round, as you can imagine. So finally, toward the end of my sophomore year, we're going to decide who the team's going to be next year, because we're not qualifying for nationals. And he assigns me to debate with Charles to go to a tournament at the University of Southern Mississippi. Never been over there, don't know any of it's mostly Texas and Oklahoma universities kind of thing. And Charles and I make it to the final round against a North Texas team that had been in the semifinals of NDT the year before. Not that we knew or cared, we were we're going to do this. Charles and I won the final round on a 2-1 ballot. And boy, we're sky high and our chest is out, and boy, aren't we good. So we're reading the ballots, of course, in the car on the way back, and it's a 1-1 split from the 2 debate coaches. And the third judge who voted for us, who's an English teacher at Southern Miss, writes an entire ballot about North Texas. You split an infinitive. You cannot do that. That is improper English, and I am going to vote against you. So we turned around, went back and told them they deserve the trophy, don't you? No, not really. I mean, so, I wanted recognition, individual, all that, and I learned better. I learned what counted was the team effort. I learned what counted was that Cully and Bill were just as good